All right, thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Kurt Prendergast. I'm the opinion editor at the Arizona Daily Star. We are doing candidate interviews, and today we have Luis Pozzolo and Raúl Grijalva, who are running in Congressional District 7. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep everybody muted except for the candidates and myself. As we go along, you use the chat function and you can submit questions. I'm going to ask the candidates just give a brief intro who they are, and then I have some big time topics I'm going to ask about, and then I'll start filtering in the questions from the readers. So if we can start, let's start with Luis. I just want to get a little bit about who is Luis. We'll talk about all the issues and everything as we go through, but just, what's your work experience? Have you ever held a public office before? Just kind of give us the sense of who is Luis.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Luis Pozzolo. I'm an immigrant, naturalized American citizen. I was born in Uruguay, came to America 20 years ago. I am a naturalized citizen, like I said. I'm a business owner. I did work on several multinational companies, that held several positions: director of operations, general manager, safety manager. And I'm running for Congress. I'm not a politician. I've never been involved in politics in America and never run for office before.
And how long have you lived in this congressional district?
I live in Maricopa City. Right now, Maricopa is outside the district by 2 miles. I've been living here for 4 years and a half. I lived in Texas before for 40 years, and I live in Kentucky for 10 years.
So you live outside the district?
No, Maricopa City is now outside the district. Half of Maricopa City is after the redistricting, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, Congressman Grijalva, could you give us a little bit of your work history, education, whatnot?
Thank you very much. And born and raised here in Southern Arizona, and have lived coincidentally and raised a family and grandchildren and all that in this particular district that I have the privilege and responsibility to represent now for my life. And my work background has been in public policy, but I worked for the city of Tucson in social work and ran a community center. I worked at the University of Arizona as assistant dean to students, and worked in a variety of jobs like we all do when we're raising our families and trying to make ends meet. Mona and I have 3 daughters and 5 grandbabies, which is a proud moment for both of us. And they're all doing well. The issue to me is that this district in the borderlands is a unique place. And my work as an elected official, both at the local level and at the national level, has been constantly about how do we make this uniqueness of Southern Arizona stronger, more vibrant, more inclusive, more equitable. And that's the values that I brought to office, and those are the values that I strived. And I'm in office on the shoulders of the Voting Rights Act. I'm in office on the shoulders of efforts on to make sure that every voice counts, and that and our democracy began to show the many faces of its great nation. And I'm one of the beneficiaries of that right to vote, and the Voting Rights Act, which empowered people who in the past didn't have that opportunity to suddenly have their voice in a democracy, citizens. Born and raised here, and I probably end up my life here, but it is a special place that I believe is unique, and I have tried to represent it with a great deal of respect and a great deal of understanding, and I hope care.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start off with one of the issues that's been on the minds of a lot of our letters to the editor writers on the opinion pages. It's water. So right now we have the Colorado River is low, Lake Mead, Lake Powell is low. The states, the Colorado River Basin states are negotiating about what to do. Arizona's going to get some cuts. So I'd like to start with Luis. What do you think that that Congress should do with regard to water in Arizona and the Southwest?
Well, it was both a few years ago. It was the water right for Arizona, and I think we need to revise and do amendments to that. The quote for the water, doesn't really satisfies the need of different of the counties right now. There are some negotiations on the state level that we need to be listening to. But mainly we need to go back to the people and listen in what is happening with the water and who holds the right on the water issues.
Okay, Congressman?
Yeah, I think the Interior and the Bureau of Reclamation have received the authority in the last piece of legislation to deal with this drought that we shepherd through my committee and through the Senate, and the additional $4 billion that came as a consequence of the legislation that the president just signed to deal with the water issue and the Colorado River particularly. I think they have the authority now for both lower and upper basin states to mandate the kind of moves we need to make right now on that, to protect that water source, to enhance that water source, to begin to require the kind of conservation that is important. I think our state has to do their part on that conservation part. Guaranteed assured water should be a criteria for everybody, and the Water Commission in the state should have the opportunity to say no to projects that are draining that water, and that it's not fitting it's not fitting all the needs of the state. We have going forward some tough decisions to make, some tough choices to make in this state, from ratepayers to agriculture to industry to mining to extraction, huge water users in this state of ours. And I think that that's the meeting of mind. I think right now the group that has been put together by the governor is slanted in one direction. And we have encouraged this population growth in the state. And now that we have it, we need to accommodate the fact that the Colorado River needs to be protected, and there has to be a permanent ban on uranium mining so that contamination is not an issue there. And the state has to become more assertive in the policies that it has. There should be no reason why mining is exempt from any limit on how much groundwater they can draw down. There should be no reason for that. And assured water shouldn't just be some formality. It should carry with it fact and science, and the decision to say no on some projects should be available to the state of Arizona. Right now, it's not. So it's a combination of state policy, but at this juncture, Interior has the authority. It doesn't need to go back to require of both upper and basin states to begin to make those critical decisions on water usage and where the reductions are going to occur.
So you brought up mining, the water use in mining, and I think Luis, on your website, mining is one of your big issues. I was wondering, what do you think in terms of water use by mining? What should be the regulation?
Well, mining is very different. Maybe like 27 years ago, mining doesn't require or recycle a lot of the water they use. But at the same time, we need to be practical and understand. For example, right now we have a big push for electric cars. An electric car requires 500 pounds of copper. So we don't mind where that copper is coming from. Africa, China, Middle East. So we do have big amount of copper in our district. We can only extract that copper safely and at the same time create jobs for our people in a district where unemployment rates are roaring and they are double that the other part of Arizona. So mining has been, for so many years, a big part of the economy in Arizona. And, for the last 20 years, they've been under attack. It's always excuse, it's always a problem. It's court things are not friendly with, even if they fulfill all the requirements, it's always a no from different organizations, from Congressman Grijalva, to stop mining because of his agenda. We really need to be practical and understand that we really need minerals for everything. Even if we need oil to build plastic for the electric cars. And that is not happening. We don't have a sustainable position on minerals in Arizona on a national level.
And with regard to water use in mining, is there, I'm not sure if I caught it, but is
Okay,
there...
mining, you know, if you look into their process, into their business process and operational process, they basically recycle 75% of the water they use. So we need to find the balance between using water, how much water, what technology we have available, but at the same time, we need to understand we do need to extract those minerals because they are needed for humans to use.
Essential minerals are important. It's where and how we extract that. And that's the fundamental question that, and all the controversies, whether it's Rosemont, Oak Flats, uranium mining being promoted in the Grand Canyon region, where all those controversies exist, it's because there's been a lack of inclusion in those kinds of discussions. And dealing with the law of 1872, a mining law that basically handcuffs the federal government, they don't have the ability to say no. They don't have the ability to create options that would be less intrusive and safer. And you know, to say that 75% of the water is being recycled, I don't believe that. The drawdown, that's why they have to get a water permit. That's why they have to get a clean water assurances and of all these mining operations, because exactly that, the huge amount of water that's used for the first time and for the last time. Whatever happens in recycling does not reach 75% of the drawdown that they're making into groundwater or from CAP. So
How do you know you didn't let them operate for 10 years? You've been fighting them for 10 years. You know, I had the time to look into their business process and operational process. And I know you don't understand about business. You never run a business in your life, but you should go back and look into the documentation. And if they don't comply, we can penalize them. But, you know, having this company investing money here, we know, and for 10 years been playing around in court, it doesn't make any favor to anybody, especially for the hardworking Americans, unemployed right now. They don't have jobs, inflation are killing them. And you are basically, you know, you said the federal government have no authority on this. And what are you doing for the last 10 years in natural resources? Fighting and fighting and fighting mining, not because you don't believe in their process, because that is your agenda.
Given all that, and I think one of the things that we will quibble about and argue about and debate is policies and philosophies that we bring in and values that we bring into office as candidates. What we shouldn't be able to.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, Luis, we got to have talk. We'll bounce back and forth.
Luis, I know you're a first-time candidate, but there's a certain courtesy that's afforded to one another. I don't interrupt you. You don't interrupt me. The point I'm going to make is that we have to look at the long term. Good example, uranium mining along the Grand Canyon and the threat that is to the Colorado River. Now, are we all saying that we have to do that when less than 1% of the uranium is underground in that region compared to the rest of the country? But we would risk that whole area and contamination of water. We're still cleaning up the orphan mine, now going on 3 decades, billions of dollars in cleanup. That company walks away from it. We have Grupo Mexico that runs a SARCO that is a multinational based somewhere else with no liability here. We have to include the inclusion part in these decisions is critical. Indigenous people, where much of the litigation and fight and pushback comes from. Conservationists, where much of the fight comes from. Recreationalists, where much of the fight comes from. They have to be included. It's not a question of stopping. It's a question of how and when. And bringing mining industry into this century. They can make claims. You know, the people that make claims about, in their foreign mining operation, they're used to exploitation of workers. They're used to destroying valuable, as they did in Australia, one of these mining companies that wants to do Rosemont and Resolution Copper as well. They destroyed 40,000-year-old Aborigine caves in order to do what they're doing now. And so, yeah, there's consequences. I want to make sure that we have a law in place and a process in place that's inclusive and looks at intended and unintended consequences. And so the company cannot just walk away from a responsibility.
Okay, great. So Luis, I'm going to give you like 30 seconds or so to respond, and then we're going to move on to another topic.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. We were talking about copper. Rosamine mine is not a uranium mine. And again, what happened in another country doesn't mean it's going to happen here. But you know, if Raúl Grijalva believe in the environment, he needs to understand the environment is global. And when they are extracting those minerals that we're buying from other countries, China, Africa, Afghanistan, can they mine safer than we can? No, they can't. So we're giving them, buying the mineral from them, and are they doing that safer? And I think, you know, the government, I understand. I'm glad I'm a first-time politician because I'm a business person, and I understand the businesses cannot wait for 10 years for government to take a decision in investment at $2.5 billion. It's ridiculous.
Okay, great. All right, so changing gears here. Another issue, you know, that's a big deal in Arizona and nationwide is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So that gave a lot more power to state legislatures to pass laws, but it also the doors open for the federal government to pass a law relating to abortion. So I want to ask, should Congress pass a law regulating abortion? And if so, what should that law look like? Luis, I'll start with you.
Well, I believe this is what is not in the Constitution is reserved to the states. And that's exactly what happened in the Supreme Court. They didn't abolish abortion. They left that to be decided by each state. And that's as a state level need to be decided. I don't think the federal government should pass any type of law regulating or controlling or making free, whatever it is, it need to be controlled, and the legislator need to come by the state, from the state.
All right, and then you know, if just
Yeah, of course.
if it did come up, what kind of law would you want it to be, Luis?
Well, I think the state is very clear about there's 3 exceptions for abortion. I'm a pro-life guy. I believe, you know, life starts in conception, and you know, and there are a lot of technology and pills and things that you can use to make sex safer before you create that conception. And after that, we need to live with the consequences, and we cannot be killing, by abortion and make abortion open for every type of case. I don't believe in that. I'm a Christian. I believe, in the life starting conception.
Okay, Raúl?
Yeah, my position is that we need to cut, and I participated in one other vote to correct a Supreme Court decision that had to do with equal pay issues for women. And the Supreme Court had ruled in a direction, and we passed the law, Senate approved it, and that was about 8 years ago. Here's another opportunity to codify into law Roe versus Wade and the general personal freedom protections that women have to have in this country, like males or any other person. It's about equal protection under the law, and women's rights and personal freedoms, to me, require that the House and the Senate and Congress send to the president a codification of Roe versus Wade at the very minimum, to make sure that we reinstate a right. And I for the life of me, this has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with the application of our democracy equally to every citizen, and that's what we need to do, to understand that once we start setting different standards for different sets of our citizens, that we create an unequal and very, very oppressive situation for that group that isn't favored. And in this instance, it's women. And what happened with Roe versus Wade and the decision by that extremist Republican court is that women don't have the same personal freedoms and rights. That it's a decision that I wouldn't want to confront. But for women that need to confront this decision on advice of their doctor, in consultation with their faith, and in consultation with their families, make a decision that they want to terminate a pregnancy, that decision is hers, and we need to protect that right and that particular freedom. And I think we need to codify it into law.
Okay. There's a whole lot to be said about abortion, but I do want us to keep moving along. So another thing is mass shootings and gun violence. This seems like it occurs all too frequently, and it's a plague on the country, it seems. But it's also, there's a lot of important issues involved, such as Second Amendment rights. So Raúl, I want to start with you. What do you think the Congress should do with regard to mass shootings and gun violence?
That's an interesting point. I would just replicate. I would just do what we just did. Make the distinction between the House of Representatives and the Senate, because I think it's an important distinction. We did our job on this issue. We did our jobs on voting rights. We did our jobs on women's rights. We passed legislation that is in the Senate right now. But essentially, we went on a common sense agenda. And the common sense agenda is 18 to 21 before you're acquired, before acquiring a weapon, semi-automatic, etc., a weapon in general. The other issue is red flag laws, common sense. The ammunition, how much? And I think down the road for me personally is the banning of assault weapons that we had for up to 20 years ago. And I think all those are to reduce the violence. I don't know where in the Second Amendment, this is not an attack on the Second Amendment. The people have the right, my neighbors have the right, and some of them do, to keep a gun, and to keep a gun for whatever reason, hunting, protection, etc. I respect that. But I don't think that it should be a purchase of a gun and the use of a gun. And we've seen two recent ones here in Arizona, and one just recently, where the use of these deadly warfare weapons are the ones that are causing the damage and the violence and the destruction in this country. If you want to help control the violent side of it, you need to manage the gun, who has a gun and who doesn't have a gun. And by that, I mean people that are felons shouldn't, people on a list shouldn't. If you're a minor, you shouldn't. And semi-automatic weapons or automatic weapons should be at the very minimum a very, very limited, and at the very maximum, to which I support, is a banning of those weapons.
Luis?
Okay, I'm a Second Amendment. I believe in the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear, and on the Second Amendment rights that people have. But I will say that a person like Raúl, who lives next to the border, he knows that gun controls that not stop criminals for having guns. We have all these cartels. They have better weapons that even our border patrol have, and these people are buying that in a country like Mexico, who have very strong gun control regulations. So the only thing you're doing, creating more regulation, is preventing good citizens to have the way to protect their life, their families, and their properties. So if basically what you're doing right now is putting the problem in the guns, and the guns are not the problem. We have a mental issue right now in our society because we have lost a lot of our values as a society. And if you're going to go and infringe, good citizens' right just to make those people stay away, it's a big black market here where you can buy all those guns. And mainly the people who have guns right now, they are controlled. Grijalva is talking about automatic weapons. And I think he confused what a semi-automatic weapon is with an automatic weapon. So you need to have a very special license and pass so many background checks to have an automatic weapon right now. So a semi-automatic weapon is not an assault rifle. An assault rifle is an automatic gun who can fire 500 rounds a minute. And regular citizens don't have the right to have that. A semi-automatic gun is any gun. A 1911 from World War II, a 45 caliber pistol is a semi-automatic gun. In Korea War, we already use semi-automatic pistols. So what are you going to do? You're going to just infringe the right of good citizen that follow the rules. They don't have any criminal record, just to prevent criminals to have guns they're going to buy in the black market. I don't believe that is a solution.
I'm sorry, Raul, I'm going to ask Luis. So it's not so much the guns. I believe you talked about mental health problems.
Yes.
So what would you do with regard to mental health problems to make, with regard to gun safety and stopping mass shootings?
Well, I think we need to start evaluating, what the real issues are, because the first thing we do, we have a mass shooting here. And before even the bodies are cold, we're already talking about the weapons and Second Amendment and all these issues, but we don't address the main issues, that is mental issues. We don't address the issues that instead to hire 85,000 IRS agents, we should be hiring maybe security guards that they are police officers or retired police officers. They can be in schools to prevent this. Just preventing that. How you're going to stop the Chicago, for example, terrorist attack? The Boston Marathon. Are you going to ban nails and pressure cookers? That's what you're going to do? No, we need to attack the problem to understand why these young people are doing what they're doing. The guns have been available in this country for 250 years, and this wasn't happening before. So I believe, we really need to start looking without the perspective, taking our agendas away. I'm a Second Amendment guy. Well, this guy hates the Second Amendment. Let's look into the issues, and the real issue is a mental issue. It's not the guy who walks into a school and starts shooting people. So we really need to start looking into that. Do more consultation, look into, into the mental problems that we're facing right now. I think the economy, the inflation, the absence of jobs, unemployment, drugs, they're a main issue and a main content for people to be doing what they're doing.
Raúl, you want to respond?
The NRA talking points are always, it's about mental health. So let's not deal with this other issue of common sense gun safety legislation. It is about some theory that if we arm ourselves for war, that we will be safer. And so it becomes a question of volume, not of safety. And it works to the gun manufacturers because they make more money. And it works to the NRA because their coffers get full and they keep applying this line that isn't true. The issue, and if it was, the last administration, the Trump administration spent 4 years emasculating and tobacco firearms agents across this country. The people responsible for gun running, for as much as we talk about the cartels, there is an industry sending guns there from the United States. 80+% of the guns confiscated originated in the United States, in Mexico, and in Central America. And those guns are on the border. They're on gun shows with huge loopholes in terms of being able to acquire a semi-automatic. And then if it's the difference semi and full is such, then I think my opponent would agree with me. Then let's not allow and prohibit the sale of conversion kits for semi-automatics to make them automatic.
Luis, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are provisions for guns. The lower receiver of any automatic weapon is totally different than a semi-automatic rifle. So it's no conversion. It's illegal right now to buy any type of conversion to make a semi-automatic gun an automatic gun. So Grijalva talked about those guns going from here to Mexico. Well, the majority of the cartels are using AK-47. The AK-47s are built in Russia, in Cuba, Romania. They are not built here in the US. The AK-47 the cartels are using, they are built in another country. They are built in China, Yugoslavia, ex-Yugoslavia. So they are not built over here. So, again, to understand the issue, and I'm going to clarify this, I'm not an NRA guy, and I don't believe in red flags too, because tomorrow I divorce my wife and my wife is angry with me. She can red flag me and they come and take all my guns just because my wife red flagged me. So the red flag laws doesn't work neither. We really need to go deeper into this. And, as the NRA, according to Grijalva, is making a lot of money, the government is making a lot of money. because they're taxing the hell out of the guns that the people are selling. So the government is making billions of dollars taxing those guns too. So, but I want to clarify, I'm not even a member of the NRA. I'm a guy who came from a country that we couldn't stop criminality because we couldn't even buy a 22 caliber revolver to protect our families. So I really know what gun control can do to your society and how bad you feel in your house where you don't have any way to protect your family from criminals. They are coming with AK-47s, built in China, built in Yugoslavia, AR-15s built in Brazil. And still, the country was born as a country that have very strong gun control laws too. It didn't prevent those criminals to come after our businesses and our families. So gun control laws do not prevent bad guys to have guns.
I've lived in this community, and I've seen the effects of lack of gun control, lack of gun safety legislation. In the last 2 decades, the escalation, the availability, and the violence associated, and the mass shootings that have become a daily occurrence almost in this nation of ours have escalated. And that is with the loosening. And I never said my opponent's a member. I said NRA talking points. The loosening of all gun safety legislation of any kind by the NRA has created a situation where I have watched it, the lack of, and the consequences of that.
Okay, so I don't, we've gone back and forth a lot. Luis, if you want to keep going on this, we could do it for a little bit, but I kind of want to move. Do you have anything else you want to?
Well, I would say that I have seen the escalation of fentanyl and drugs coming through the border, and we have not done anything to stop that. And I think drugs are a big problem. If you have, a person using drugs and having a gun, and I don't see my opponent doing anything, absolutely anything to secure the border and stop the crisis and on overdose in the country. We lost 110,000 people on fentanyl, and Grijalva is still silent about.
Okay, so we're going to spend a good chunk of time on the border. So don't this is you all are running for the border district in Arizona. So I just want to get one more out of the way here. We have the claim about the 2020 election being stolen. So Donald Trump continues to beat this drum. We have a slate of candidates in Arizona who are running on this. We have across the country, including Arizona, there are a lot of laws being passed that I think critics of those laws say that it's going to restrict the access to the vote. So I want to start with you, Luis. Do you think that there should be a federal law governing voting practices? And if so, what do you think it should look like?
No, I believe the elections are by constitution. They need to be regulated by each state. I believe at the same time, as you see in the San Luis, that's part of our district, San Luis Yuma, the ex-mayor is going to be convicted in the next 2-3 weeks. She pled guilty for felony for harvesting ballots. There is a lot of problems in our election system. The harvesting is real. There are videos, they show that. There are people coming with 20, 30, 40, 50, ballots in their hands. The laws are very clear in Arizona. We are not enforcing those laws. I have seen, for example, I saw a registration the other day for somebody who was born in 1946, but it was registered in 1921. I know there are over 360 people in Pima County. They are over 100 years old. There are several 120 years old registered in Pima County to vote, and they're active. And the oldest person in this country is 114. So we really need to look into this. It's not about, restricting people the right to vote. It's just to be sure that the people who are allowed to vote, their citizens are allowed to vote one time and their vote count one. That's the only thing I believe. And I have seen, I was very skeptic about, especially coming from a country when even it's a smaller country, the system is a lot more secure. It's more old school, but it's very secure. There's no way you can do anything of the things you can see here. The elections are run very bad. I can give you my example. I live in Pinal County. I never registered for mail-in ballot. I received two ballots in my house. My wife is not registered for mail-in ballot. She received 2 ballots. So we could send those 2 ballots and go and vote in person the same day. So we need to really look into this, not as the election system is a heart of this republic. And as just plain agenda and plain political views on this is not going to help. I think we need to have a serious discussion about the problem that we really have. I'm a Microsoft professional, certified professional, and I looked at it and I saw crazy things happening in Maricopa County. So you're telling me that system administrator will not change password for 2.5 years? Even McDonald's change your password every 30 days. You are going to tell me that same person, 5 different people will use the same login to log in into a server? That things cannot happen. It doesn't happen even in a republic, banana republic, but it's happening here in America. And the only thing we're doing is adding rhetoric to the issue. This is not about restricting voter right. It's just being sure that our elections are conducted properly and that we have all the guarantees that whoever won really won. And I'm not getting into a rhetoric about Trump. I wasn't even involved in politics. When Trump, he can do whatever claims he want to do. I base what I just said based on facts. There are 14 indictments coming in San Luis, Arizona, related to voter fraud. And we need to start looking into those things and be serious about it. I don't care who wins. It's a Democrat or Republican, but I want to be sure that person who wins is a person the people choose, is a people choice to represent them in whatever position they're running for.
And who won the 2020 presidential election?
Well, according with the courts, it's Biden, right?
Mm-hmm. And you believe that was a free and fair election, that he was elected?
Well, I thought a lot of fraud. You saw a lot of fraud. Those numbers, you can say those numbers are real or not real. They can change the election or not. I don't have all the elements to make the adjustment.
Okay. All right, Raúl.
Biden won. Biden's president of the United States, and he won fair and square. And he won, and if we need more proof, 66 out of 67 courts, and one was on a technical issue. The only one that did not reaffirmed that judicially. States certified the election, including Republicans, secretaries of state, affirmed that election. In Maricopa, the Board of Supervisors affirmed that election, a Republican majority, 4-1. And so the list goes on. And so what is at the heart of this? The heart of this is I think the very dangerous thing that is going on, that what we're dealing with here is not fact. What we're dealing here is not, based on science or empirical information in terms of an election. It's based on anecdotal stories. It's based on I heard, I believe, I saw, back that up, provide that information. And every time on this voter fraud, the elections are not solid, they don't have integrity. Every time those people that make those accusations are brought forth, they can't produce the evidence because the evidence is not there. Number one. Number two, the democracy is at stake here. And I think there has to be federal overarching legislation that protects the right to vote, that doesn't penalize or make more difficult the ability of people to vote based on the criteria of protected class. And that involves people of color, that involves women, people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus community, that their rights not be infringed upon. I think that has to be an overarching piece of legislation at a federal level that does that. To leave it to the states, in some states, that's not a problem. In other states that we've seen here in Arizona, it's a big problem because everything you hear about election is to restrict and limit so that we end up with a minority running the majority. The whole process of voting is that there is a majority will attached to this winner of this election. And to question that after this last one in 2020, I think it's already been proven. And then we have January 6th happened in order to stop the official counting of that election. And that horrific moment, and I was on the floor debating Paul Gosar, he wanting not to accredit a vote in Arizona, and I supporting the accreditation of that vote when that whole nightmare happened to us. And that insurrection, that attempted coup, orchestrated at many levels, fueled by whacked out conspiracy theories, fueled by racism, fueled by fear mongering and fear, and an extremist agenda, came close to stopping a legitimate election. And so now we need to protect that right to vote more than ever. And here in Arizona, the extremist slate that's been put forth by the Republican Party will do nothing but constrict that right to vote. Because the only way they can stay in power is to limit the number of votes, not to increase them. I'm for increasing it to every qualified voter. And I'm for any evidence that's not anecdotal, and I heard, and I saw, and I remember, and I studied it myself. Anything that can be brought forth as evidence, do it, or quit repeating the same lie over and over and over again.
Luis, would you like to respond? Or-
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, the ex-mayor of San Luis, part of the Grijalva's Democratic Party, she pleads guilty of a felony. That's a fact. That's a fact. We're just waiting to see if she's going to get a year or 4 months or 2 years in jail. But she changed her innocence to guilty. So it's already proved. She said, yes, I'm guilty for ballot harvesting. That's a fact. So my question should be, protect the right to vote to who? So I believe that only citizens should have the right to vote over 18 years old, and they have to write the right to vote, only one time. That's it. I don't see how that is a restriction, and that goes to anybody. It's minorities, doesn't care what gender you are, what color you are. It's just, that's the base of the republic. The citizens over 18 years old have the right to vote just one time, and we need to be sure they vote just one time. I don't think that's rhetoric. And, you know, and I know we got into January 6th, and that's a thing that Grijalva likes. He registered to run in January 6th. But we asked him, what about extremists burning businesses in Seattle? $60 billion in damage, more than 200 people killed. I didn't hear and heard. I didn't hear anything from Grijalva about that problem. So we need to clarify, protect the right to vote to who? We want everybody to vote. Somebody coming from Ukraine tomorrow say, well, I'm going to vote in the election. And that's what Arizona is doing right now. To federal office, you don't need to prove your citizenship to vote. Is that correct? Is that right?
All right, so there's a whole lot to be said about this as well,
Yeah.
but we are, time is of the essence here.
Truth would be wonderful.
I'm sorry?
I said truth would be an interesting addition to the conversation. But anyway.
All right, so let's get into the border. All right, so CD7 covers basically all of the Arizona-Mexico border. There's a small part in Cochise County that is in CD6. So whichever one of you is elected, you're going to be the one who speaks on behalf of the border in Congress. When the border is in the news, something happens to the Arizona border, reporters are going to be calling you up. They're going to be expecting a statement from you. They're going to want to, you're going to be cast as an expert, a person who really, really knows what's going on at the border. So I want to ask you, what is the biggest problem you see at the border, and how would you solve it? So I'm going to start with Raúl.
Yeah, and there's been an evolution for me personally in terms of policy on this issue. I always believe that the best way to the solution, short term and long term, to the challenges on the border and the drama that is occurring on a daily basis there is comprehensive immigration reform. But politically, that has been difficult, if not impossible. And so now I really think that we have to look at some solutions that begin to take us in a direction that stabilizes that border, that puts emphasis on process, that puts emphasis on humanitarian support, and that puts an emphasis on doing what needs to be done on that border in terms of security that is effective. And And I think all those have to be looked at. But I would support the House again codifying DACA into law, DACA and the Promise Act. I would support Congress again in deported veterans legislation. I would support Congress again on a equitable guest worker program. I would support Congress again on how we refine and how we resource upwards the whole asylum and refugee process. All those issues are there, but right now, because it is a cannon fodder political issue, we can't talk about solutions. We just talk about we talk around the edges, and then those of us who are looking at solutions are put in the position of having to push back on some of the most extremist positions that are taken. I would repeat that publicly. I would look for those solutions. I think communities along the border, the borderland folk, want solutions. We've had Obama on, we've had enforcement as the primary, if not the only issue. That got aggravated even worse under the Trump administration. Has that reduced the stemmed the flow? No. Has that made the process easier? No. And so now we're confronted with this again, and we want to go back to the same rhetoric about what was tried and didn't work and repeat that process again and again. It's shut the border down, make sure it's secure, and then we'll just then decide who is qualified and who is not, and that'll solve the border problem. There's resource demands on the border, there is environmental demands on the border, and there is quality of life issues for the borderland that have to be dealt with simultaneously. And all those things are before us. I think there's an opportunity, and that's what I've been promoting, to take the borderlands as a region of this nation and make the kinds of investments that'll bring security, but also bring the kind of economic vitality that the area needs as well. I grew up there. I grew up in a ranch between Nogales and Tucson. That's where my dad was. He came over as a bracero, and I was born here in this country. And that's my life story, but it's not any different than most of the life stories of any immigrant coming to this nation. And so what is that path? What is security? Because it's a three-legged stool. You can't just do security and ignore the rest, because we're seeing the consequences of ignoring the rest before us every day on our ports of entry across the southern border.
All right, Luis.
Well, Grijalva have it very right. Border communities want solutions, and they didn't get any solution for the last 20 years. That's a reality. It is time for change. Immigration reform had nothing to do with national security and border security. This is not just people coming into the country to work. You have a criminal organization, the most powerful criminal organization on the other side of the border, what is the Sinaloa cartel, making $5,000 to $9,000 per person they cross. So if you make your number, 2 to 4 million people coming across that border, you imagine how much money that people are making. There are more problems than just legalized people who are already here. It is sex trafficking, it's drug trafficking happening in the border, it's child trafficking happening in the border. And for 20 years, we didn't solve those problems. And we already have somebody who represents this district who said that he doesn't understand the issues. He understands the communities. He was born in that community, but still refused to find real solutions to the border. If you want to see immigration reform without border security, just look into 1986, last reform, immigration reform. By the way, it was passed by a Republican president, not by a Democratic president. Grijalva had 8 years with Obama, now 2 years with Biden. Still no solutions. The crisis is getting worse and worse and worse. Tucson is becoming a lead town of overdose on fentanyl, sex trafficking, child getting raped through the border and sold in America, and we are silent about that. This is a national security issue. We caught 140 terrorists coming through the border from Mexico, and we are not doing absolutely nothing. We really need to find solutions to secure the border, stop the trafficking, and of course, we need to look into immigration reform. But that's after we secure the border. It's anarchy what is happening in the border. And I know Grijalva doesn't go very much, but I spend a lot of time to understand the issues in the communities and at the border to look what is happening there. And basically the administration is giving this green card for everybody to come over here. Here we go. Let's over here, come over here. There are benefits for you. We don't deport you. We put you in a 6 years old, court. You come back in 6 years and nothing happened. Of course, we need solutions. And if you talk with these communities, they are overrun by cartels. But we already have the same person representing and talking about the border issues with no solutions. That's a reality. It is time for a change. And when I go to Washington, I want to be very clear. Border security and national security is one thing. Immigration reform for the people who are here, who are not criminals, who don't have a criminal record. DACA students, they don't have a criminal record, and they are good citizens. Of course, we need to give that solution. Who can know more about immigration than a real immigrant like myself?
All right, so there's, the border is complicated, right? So I want to pull apart some of the issues. So we're going to start with you, Luis. You brought up fentanyl. What should Congress do to stop? So fentanyl, for people who are maybe not aware, fentanyl is a very, very powerful opioid, and it is linked to tens of thousands of overdose deaths every year. So what would you do to stop the flow of fentanyl across the border?
What we need to do, first of all, as you saw in Arizona, the second line of defense of Arizona, for example, I'll give you an example, the Yuma checkpoint. The Yuma checkpoint was catching 50% of the drugs coming through the border. They, come through the border, and the checkpoint, we cut that. But the Biden administration shut down all the checkpoints. I go through every checkpoint, and I check the checkpoint. I have a picture from Douglas. I have a picture from Yuma. I have a picture from Arivaca. I have a picture from Sassaville. Those checkpoints are closed. Why the checkpoints are closed? That's number one. Second one, let's Border Patrol do their job. Let them enforce the laws. Allow them more academies. You lost 20% of the Asians, and now 30% of the remaining Asians are right now used to do paperwork for people coming and claiming political asylum into this country. So we really need to find real solutions. The port of entries from Mexico to Arizona, they're all in CD7. Get more equipment, get more equipment for custom, better badges for custom, more agents for custom, so we can verify. No fast track. We're going to have a fast process with a very, very detailed search of every load coming through the border.
Yeah, so I just want to I know there's a lot to say here, but when you're talking about checkpoints, you're talking about the ones that are on highways, not like at the border, correct?
Yeah, those are checkpoints. The borders are ports of entries.
For a long time, like the main place, and you kind of get to it afterwards, the main place fentanyl and most hard drugs is caught is at the ports of entry, right at the border. Some is caught at the checkpoints, but the vast majority for years and years is the ports of entry. So, Raúl, what would you do to stop the flow of fentanyl?
I said earlier, when in part of the response about looking at the mission in terms of security and Border Patrol and ICE. Look at the mission, and I think that we need to resource focus on exactly what we're dealing with. We're dealing with organized crime at a very high level, and the issue of fentanyl now coming into this country is and even the children that were left out in the desert by smugglers here in southern Arizona, a tragedy that was avoided thanks to Border Patrol, and that was a great saving act. And I said the gun running that way, the dope coming this way, the people smuggling, all those things need a focus because it's organized, and that's why people are making money off of it. And here in the United States, it's so interesting that the pharmaceutical companies, Purdue and the principal, but pharma in general, spread this all over from Kentucky, Tennessee, where it became a prevalent issue of opioids and fentanyl and oxy, to it kept moving. And eventually it became a money to this organized crime. I think we need to focus DEA and treat this as the kind of threat that it really is, and focus on that and resource the ports of entry, because you're right, 70% of the confiscation that happened with regard to illicit drugs happen at the ports of entry.
All right, so another thing that happens in southern Arizona dealing with the border is we have a lot of migrants cross the border and they die. They die in the desert. And we are now 22, 23 years into this happening. The Border Patrol has taken some steps such as putting out rescue beacons. They have like a command center at their headquarters to try to coordinate rescues. They fly helicopters out to get people. We also have people on the ground, organizations such as No More Deaths, Humane Borders, who are dedicated to, lessening the deaths in the desert. I want to start with you, Raúl. What should the federal government, what should Congress do with regard to migrants dying in the desert, southern Arizona?
The response in southern Arizona from the organizations you mentioned, from local, municipal and county search and rescue, tribal search and rescue, and Border Patrol search and rescue, all trying to intervene and prevent the deaths. I think if any other on an international level, this would be a huge humanitarian crisis of huge proportions. And I think that what the government can do is to recognize that the rhetoric around making everything associated with immigrants as a threat, the fear-mongering rhetorical flashes that you hear from people running for president to running for governor over and over again about what this means, this invasion, all lead to the conclusion that these lives that are in peril, whether they were dumped there by a smuggler or try to cross over on their own, needs a response. It's a humanitarian issue, and that's the way we should deal with it. We should resource local communities, and that requires federal funds. We should resource and strengthen the Border Patrol's response, and we should provide the life-saving opportunities out in the desert. This is no time to prosecute, as we have in the past, those relief workers that were brought to trial and found not guilty, thank God. Nor should we tolerate the water jugs being punctured and cut out in the desert by people that feel that should not be the response. All this adds up to a humanitarian issue that isn't dealt like a humanitarian issue. The overlay of enforcement still lays there, and the stereotype about all migrants being a threat continues to be there. And that is why the response has not been what it has. Have we asked for this over and over again? Yes. No deaf ears for 4 years. Some response lately, but I don't think to the intensity and the resources that are needed to deal with this humanitarian crisis.
Luis?
Well, I have spent a lot of time walking and researching, and I spent a lot of time walking those areas where, you said people are dying. Mm-hmm. The main problem to understand that this is organized crime. It's not spontaneous people coming across the border. If you are a spontaneous guy coming through the border and you decide to come across, you don't come across without paying those cartels the money they want. They have bunkers, they have people watching their border, they have even sometimes better technology than our Border Patrol has. So what you're doing is building a trail with water and food and blanket and socks every half a mile for those cartels, for that criminal organization to have a path to make the money. So we need to stop this at the border. We really need to bring more border security, bring more agents to that area, and of course, prevent every crisis, any humanitarian crisis. But how humane is to allow people to be smuggled by criminal organizations, and you have people in these sites who are building that network of water and food for that people to come across in that specific area. Because let's be realistic, if you see that as a business and you don't have water and food for the next 5 days, you're not going to even send your coyotes, your smugglers through that area. They are coming across because we have organizations who 2 times a week put the water, put the food, put the blankets. So we need to stop this at the border so it doesn't become a humanitarian crisis in American soil. And of course, we need to prevent the death of people and children and everything. I have seen horrible things at the border. I have personally rescued people myself. Of course, with the Border Patrol, call and say, hey, there are two people here that are dehydrated. I'm going to give them some water. I'm going to take it to you. I have done that personally. And it have moved me. I spent a day searching for a 10-year-old girl who got lost in a national forest. She was left behind by smugglers, and I couldn't find the girl. I believe, of course, I'm an immigrant, I'm a human. I believe we need to stop and prevent every death. But I don't think building stations for the cartels to come across the desert is a way to do it. You just basically them giving a path to come with the people across the border. And you know, it's for, even for a person who is fit, that 5 days walk is very hard. The hiking is very hard. I have walked those cartel trails myself to have the feeling on the American side, how this works, how we can prevent this. I have spent enormous amount of time to understand the issue.
Okay. All right. We have the border, you know, is physically here close by, but all of this is shaped by policy. So I want to ask you, and we'll start with you, Luis. What in terms of the immigration system, our immigration laws, who is allowed in, who is not? What is a change that you would like to see made?
Well, the first thing, I think any country need to have control of who comes into your country, who doesn't. You know, we should have a system, you know, and we're already giving 1 million citizenship a year. I think it need to be related with economy. We need to find, you know, for example, farmers, they need a lot of work. Right now, if you go to businesses, I'm a business owner, I'm a small business owner, and I'm having rough time finding people to work. And you find all these signs. So we need to relate the immigration with economy. We need to find, well, right now we need a lot of doctors, and people are waiting a month, you know, to get, you know, into a hospital to be seen by a doctor. And we have plenty of doctors in Mexico that are willing to come over here, but we don't have a process from doctors from Mexico, for example, to be doctors in the US. Nurses, we have a lot of people over there, but just if you're going to have a mass migration from a country, because in that country something happened, like could be Venezuela, it could be Ukraine, it is not related to race or geography. It's related to, you know, to understand the reality and be sustainable. What we're doing is not sustainable. You know, we are not that rich country that everybody think we are. We have $1 trillion deficit. We have a crazy inflation which is hurting every American right now. We should be focusing in those issues, to solve those issues, to bring the economy back, and have an immigration system that really mirror what this country needs, not the needs of every country around the world. We can't do that. Can you bring 2.5 billion people from China and India? No, we can't. It's not sustainable. So we need to be able to combine, you know, the reality with the regulations and rules that we create. But we need to be realistic. And right now, we are not being realistic.
Could you give me a better sense of when you say having immigration laws mirror like what the economy needs? Do you mean that every year the Congress could change the number of certain types of visas to allow people in, or do you think that people coming in to vote to mirror the, or not to vote, but to work to mirror the economy? Is that a permanent thing? Is that more of like a guest worker program? What do you envision?
Well, there are different situations. You know, there are people, you know, I have a lot of friends from Mexico. I just came from Mexico last week. I was over there meeting with business people and friends I have in Mexico. And there are a lot of people in Mexico. They're not interested to be citizens here or have a path to citizenship. They want to come over here, work for 2-4 years, you know, build their house in Mexico, buy a couple taxi cabs and run those with the family and go back to their country. Because, you know, being an immigrant and come to a different country is not easy. Some people doesn't adapt to that. So there are people that just want to be there and come here for 2 years, 4 years. So we should have a guest worker program for sure. And also there should be another ways to, you know, retain the people we really need in our market. Like I was saying, doctors, nurses, engineers. There are a lot of people that are needed over here, and we don't have a path to these people to come into the country. And part of that retention policy should be assimilate them and allow them to be citizens, of course.
Raúl?
Yeah, it's about a labor demand, labor needs, and we hear that over and over across from the business community, the shortages that they face. In Southern Arizona, it's in construction. And in Yuma, it is in the harvest time seasons. And the list goes on all across this country in terms of the kind of workforce that is needed for the future. Whatever that workforce is, needs to be accommodated in an immigration reform in a package, okay? And that's the other stool, the workforce issue and the family unification issue. That has always been central to our immigration policy, and I think that needs to be retained and dealt with, and the backlog on that process needs to be dealt with. And the other issue I think is a valid one. The issue of refugees and those seeking asylum or those seeking refuge for a lot of reasons. You have climate refugees. You have economic refugees. You have religious persecution refugees. You have political refugees. You have people fleeing their countries, particularly with regards to gender, women, because of the policies that are anti-women in a particular country. And that pressure is not going to move away. The climate around the countries, climate change is affecting this whole globe. As my opponent said correctly, it's a global issue. And that pressure is going to go. As home countries become less and less able to sustain their own population, the instinct in any human being is to seek somewhere else to feed themselves and their families. So the response is not just what we do on immigration, it's what we do beyond our borders. And this whole idea that we isolate ourselves and somehow everything will turn out better is a huge mistake. And I think the pressure that we feel on the border, on the southern border, is tied to all those pressures hitting us, and how we deal with it is what the solution-based issue that I talked about earlier. Everybody wants to talk about the situation. We know what the situation is. It's not good. But nobody wants to talk about the next step, which is a solution. And a solution just to shut it down and see what happens in the near future, huddle around each other and see if that takes care of everything, I think is not only simpleton, but wrong.
Okay. All right, so we've been doing this for over an hour, so we're gonna start our final stages here. I'm gonna grab a couple questions from our readers. One of them is they want to know, this is for Raúl, which laws you have written while you've been in Congress?
Grand Canyon Protection Act, Middle School for All Act, the Respect Act for Indigenous people across this country, the expansion of Head Start, and I'm trying to think of the recent ones and not going too far. Environmental Justice for All Act that I think will be on the floor in September. And let me move into the human resource side of it. I think we have been proponents of everybody pay their fair share. And we've been very much part of not only the Progressive Caucus, but other caucuses in making sure that every American pays their fair share. This whole idea about 87,000 new IRA agents, internal revenue IRS agents suddenly descending upon small businesses and mom and pop stores and hardworking Americans is false. The target is cheats. The target is multinational corporations that don't pay their fair share. There shouldn't, we had one corporation, GM, that didn't pay 0 federal taxes 2 fiscal years in a row. And so what I'm saying is that part of what I've been doing is promoting those kind of values. The values that I ran for office with, that I tell the voters that that's what I'm doing. and try to meet those commitments. So there's the Landscape Conservation, Outdoors American Act, and community college improvement, tuition-free at community colleges legislation that has left the House and didn't make it through the Senate. But those are pieces of legislation that I have originally sponsored and originally co-sponsored and been a participant in putting together, plus others that I can't recall it at the moment.
Okay. All right. We have another question from a reader. I like this one. And we'll start with you, Luis. What is the job of government?
Protect their citizens, protect the rights of their citizens, the citizen of the country and the people who elect them.
Okay. Raúl, how would you answer that? What is the job of government?
The job of government, as I see it, is to play a role, a supportive role, not a controlling role in bettering the lives of the American people. And I think that's the role of government, and to assure that the benefits of government are extended to all, and there be equity and fairness. And I think government, as it moves along, and we're seeing some of the back and forth right now, adjusting to the changing face of our nation, its diversity. We're seeing some of that friction across this country. Nevertheless, it's that this country regenerates itself. So yeah, I think the job of government is the betterment of in a supportive role and not a controlling role.
We have another question from a reader. Luis, when was the last time you went to the border and spoke with U.S. Border Patrol to understand the problems that they're dealing with?
Border Patrol a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Raúl?
Maybe a month ago, and to discuss the humanitarian question that came up, and also to continue to push for the idea that we need more support for the people in blue, the people that do the processing, the customs people, the ones that do the intake, so that you don't divert people to another. The shortfall on that hiring part of it, that's commerce, inspections, and processing of individuals. I think that the discussion with people, customs people and Border Patrol people and direct was about the need to lift that personnel level higher, both in Tucson, Yuma, and now Douglas.
And Luis, in one of your answers earlier, you talked about the customs officers as well. Have you been down to talk to the customs officers at ports of entry?
No, I have not talked directly to them. I have talked with Border Patrol agents there on the field. I have talked with brokers and transportation people in both, Mexican side and on the American side to understand the issues, what issues they are facing in our ports of entry, how we can agile the process without compromising security in their laws and what is coming into those laws. Mm-hmm. And you know what, like Raúl said, I know there are some of those big businesses, especially in Nogales, who are pushing for don't touch my blue officers into the border because you are going to resent my product coming every day, and the product need to be there. So we need to contemplate those businesses and big businesses over there, but at the same time we need to bring the national security to the port of entries and the border.
I'm just going to play off one question from a reader, and then I'm going to ask you your final, if there's anything else you want to mention. Let's say you're elected. What's the first bill that you're going to propose?
Myself?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Luis, you got it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I think we have already enough bills. What we need to do is take this economy and take the control of this economy and cut some of this crazy amount of bills that we're passing and every spending bill passing. We really need to take control of the inflation, the jobs, and the gas prices, mm-hmm. With what we have. Just creating more regulations and creating more bills and creating more spending is not solving those problems. It's just putting gas on the fire. We put in more and more money into a market what is already collapsing and is putting gas on the fire. So we need to find the ways to control inflation, stop printing money like crazy, like this government is doing, find a solution for gas prices. As you know, the election is getting closer, the gas prices are coming down. So the government had that right to bring that, that power to work around to bring those prices down to $1.99 or $2 they were like they were 2 years ago. They said they didn't have that power. Well, 7-8 months ago was $5-6 a gas, and now election is coming 10 weeks before election is $3.89. So it's very inconvenient that now we can control the gas prices and we can control the market. Of course, we need to keep drilling. We need to keep, increasing the production until, if the solution is electric cars, well, we need to start looking into that. Can we really go into electric cars in the way they are doing it and pushing for electric cars? We don't have the copper. We're importing a lot of that copper. So we need 500 pounds per car to build those cars. So is sustainable what this government is doing? Is not. So I think we need to cut regulation, not create more regulations.
Okay, Raúl, what's the first bill you propose if you're reelected?
Standalone bill would probably be a compilation of the provisions that have around the issue of climate that did not make it out of the Senate, both on the transportation infrastructure one and on this recent one, the IRA. There's a significant provisions to fight more assertively beyond the conversion to electric vehicles and beyond that investment that I think is healthy and good, but beyond that, and I would look at that. That would be one of the first piece. On the education side, the more I see things happening in the future, I think a bigger role for community colleges so I'm working a piece of legislation with national groups and the local college here on enhancing that role and dealing with affordability and dealing with opportunities for child care and preschool at community colleges so we can make it more accessible and keep the cost very, very low. Our state doesn't support education, and so we have to provide some supplemental support at the federal level. That's money well spent, regardless of what anybody says. And those are it. I mean, it's kind of curious and an off thing, and just a comment on my opponent, that the gas prices are going down because the government has the power. It's interesting that there was also a correlation that the Exxon, for one, and all the other major gas and oil companies reported the greatest profits, the largest profits for a 3-month period were reported in their history, to some extent, even in their history. So yeah, before we just lay it all on the government, look at those corporations that you so fondly want to let them continue to drill at will on our public lands, and the profits that they make and the profits that they continue to make.
Okay, so we are now at an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to do the final question for you both. That is just, and we'll start with you, Luis. We've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to talk about?
No, I think, this is my final statement, or I'm going to have the opportunity later for a final statement.
Oh, this is it. This is it. Yeah.
Okay, this is it. So basically, I believe the economics are the main problems that we have. Inflation, jobs, gas prices, the education issues that we're having, and people are realizing the education systems don't represent their values. And those are the keys that we need to start. There are a lot of big issues around that, but I think those are the main issues that we need to solve ASAP. We didn't have these issues 2 years ago. We have a $1.99 gas. We didn't have this inflation. We have a really better economy. This is a self-inflicted, shot that we took in our own foot doing what we're doing right now. And not only we're doing that, we are pushing and printing more money, and giving money around is creating more inflation. We are in the face of a recession. So we really need to take control of this Congress and the spending. This is a $1 trillion deficit that this Congress had for the last 40 years. And I think this, I'm not a politician. I'm running in the Republican Party, but I blame every politician in Congress right now for not being realistic, for not being serious about, and say we need to take measurements to control our budget. It's always about new. It's very easy to spend more money and ask for a new credit card. We already broke, $32 trillion, in debt. So for 20 years, we have seen, and my opponent said that, all issues are becoming bigger. But he's been there for 20 years. And we have not found solution for the main issues. We talk about electric cars. A lot of that copper could come from our district and create those jobs that our people need. And we are not doing that. So we talk about the pharmaceutical issues that Raúl talked. Well, he was in Congress for the last 20 years. Well, he didn't talk about a bill that he passed to stop pharmaceutical to push opium into our communities. And I agree with him. It has been happening. But I wasn't in government to take control of the problem or to face a problem. But he was. For 20 years, he's been there, and the economy is getting worse. Border security is out of control. Fentanyl overdose is out of control, and we need change. People are looking for change. As my opponent said, and I repeat this, all issues are becoming bigger. And he got 20 years to solve those issues, and he didn't do it.
Okay, all right. Raúl?
Thank you very much. Good opportunity. I appreciate it, Kurt. This job that I have, like I said earlier, it's a privilege and a responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And I strive consistently to get better at it, to learn more about the subjects that I'm responsible for, and how I communicate that to the people I represent. And every 2 years, there's a decision as to that, about that seriousness, and if I presented it. Well, one of the things that I think is important for people to realize, that not only about myself, but the issues that I represent and the things that I believe in, because I didn't go to Congress to be a potted plant. I came in with values, I came in with life experience, and I came in with things I believe. And I've worked hard at those things I believe. And it's always been guided by one fundamental understanding, that whatever I did here was a betterment agenda, an investment agenda. And that's the best way I can define it. And it's not, and let me tell my opponent, it's not been for lack of trying. I've been in the minority in my time in Congress more than I have been in the majority. And in those times in the minority, the struggle was to keep the worst from happening, to save Social Security, to keep Medicare alive, to keep Obamacare functional and going and funded, to try to preserve voting rights. All those were necessary and important fights to keep the situation on climate from getting worse. But, the fights about keeping the worst things from happening don't carry the notoriety, but I think that's part of the job. That is absolutely part of the job. The development of what happens now down the road, I think we have to look way beyond our nose and the 30-second soundbite and whatever the last social media Q posting said about what was really going on in the world. Ignore that, because it's based on something that's contrived and outright lies. What's ahead of us are very, very challenging times, revolving around climate and revolving around the survival and the sustainability of our democracy. Because solving economic issues, solving health access issues, education issues, immigration issues depend on our democracy, a functioning democracy, where the majority will guide that policy. And right now, the majority will has given me the opportunity the last 4 years to chair the Natural Resources Committee, and to be the second person in charge on the Education Committee. And we have strived to put into our legislation what that betterment progress agenda is. And when I go back, it'll be that same consistency people are going to get. I take this seriously. You know, when we talk about the border, I don't parade up and down the border with a semi-automatic weapon, pretending that I know what the border is. No, it's dealing with the cases that come to my office. It's dealing with an economy that is underfunded and lack of investment. It's talking about overburdened communities that receive more burden because of an enforcement-only ideology and philosophy. So yeah, we'll deal with those issues. And my consistency, I think the hardest thing for any politician is to be consistent. I have not always been entirely 100% litmus test consistency, but I have been consistent. And that's what I tell people, and they decide, and they'll decide on the 8th of November. And I'm looking forward to the election. It's not a reaffirmation of anything for me in terms of some crowning issue. No, it is that this philosophy and the set of values that I have promoted my entire career in Southern Arizona, not 4 years ago, my entire career in Southern Arizona has been consistent. And that's what I'm offering, and that I'm doing my job, and that I did my job this session when we were in the majority. And the fact that the Senate didn't pick up the baton and carry it where it should have been, all that says to me is that we push it again and we push it again, because that's what it is about being consistent. You don't give up. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come talk to us, and for also talking to each other in a civil way. You know, I think it's really important. You obviously disagree on a lot of stuff, but I really appreciate that you were able to.
No, thank you, Kurt, yeah, I appreciate that well too. I think, you know, the intensity of our differences philosophically can't be denied, but you know, I think we owe it to the voters to present to them a choice, and screaming at each other does not provide a choice. And I appreciate at least your tone, your tenor. I don't agree with you, but that's not the point here.
Yeah,
Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, so thank you, Luis. Thank you, Raúl. And thank you for everybody who took the time to come and attend. We have our next interview is tomorrow at noon with Dana Almond, who is running for in Legislative District 17. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Again, thank you to everybody, and I hope you all have a good day.